The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. Mother's handwriting, elegant and precise, spelled out my name, Elizabeth White. I already knew what was inside: the final arrangement of my marriage to Richard Campbell, heir to the Campbell shipping fortune, and, according to my parents, the catch of the decade. I was 32, and apparently still incapable of making my own life choices. I ripped it open and scanned the contents. Wedding date set for December 15th. Venue booked, dress fitting scheduled. My entire future laid out in crisp black ink on cream stationery without a single input from me. The room suddenly felt airless, like all the oxygen had been sucked out through an invisible vent. Damn it! I tossed the letter onto the counter and grabbed my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed Kate, my oldest friend since college. "They've set the date," I said when she answered, not bothering with hello. "December. They've booked everything." "Jesus, Liz. You need to put your foot down. It's not the 1800s. I sank onto my sofa, kicking off my heels. "You know my family. Traditional doesn't begin to cover it." "Then leave," Kate said simply, like it was the most obvious solution in the world. "You're a meditation instructor with credentials. You can work anywhere." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "And go where?" "I saw a posting for Mobile University. They're looking for someone to run their mindfulness program. Spanish moss, Gulf breeze, no controlling parents, arranging your marriage." I should have dismissed it immediately. Rational people don't flee across the country from arranged marriages. But something inside me, something that had been dormant for years, suddenly woke up. "Send me the link." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, watching shadows dance across it as cars passed outside my window. Did I really have the courage to upend my entire life? To disappoint my family so thoroughly? To become, in their eyes, a failure? By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I submitted my application to Mobile University, gave notice at my studio, and began quietly packing essentials. When the job offer came 3 days later, it felt like the universe confirming my choice. I didn't tell my parents I was leaving. Instead, I left a brief note explaining I needed space to think about my future. It was cowardly, perhaps, but necessary for my sanity. 2 weeks later, I watched the spectacular autumn sunset color the sky over Mobile Bay as my cab pulled up to my new apartment building. The air smelled different here, humid, salt-tinged, heavy with the scent of magnolias and possibility. "First time in Mobile?" the driver asked, catching my wide-eyed expression in his rearview mirror. "First time anywhere in a long time," I replied, surprised by how light I felt despite my exhaustion. My apartment was small but charming, with tall windows and hardwood floors that creaked pleasantly underfoot. The previous tenant had left behind a potted palm that looked barely alive. I touched one of its dry fronds and whispered, "We're both starting over, friend." That night, I sat on my balcony watching the moon rise over unfamiliar trees, sipping cheap wine from a coffee mug because I hadn't unpacked my glassware yet. My phone had been buzzing with messages from my mother all evening. I'd turned it to silent. Tomorrow was faculty orientation at the university. Tomorrow I would begin building my new life, one where I made my own choices, answered to no one but myself, and never had to endure another blind date with a suitable match orchestrated by my family. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath that didn't feel like it was being squeezed through a too tight chest. Mobile, Alabama might not have been where I'd imagined myself at 32, but as I watched a shooting star streak across the unfamiliar sky, I made a silent promise to myself. This time, I would live on my own terms. Faculty orientation was a blur of administrative forms, campus maps, and forced smiles. By mid-morning, I was desperate for caffeine. The campus coffee shop was packed with other new faculty members with the same idea, all of us clutching orientation folders and trying to look like we belonged. I was balancing a steaming cup of coffee and attempting to stuff my faculty handbook into my already overstuffed bag when it happened. I turned too quickly and collided with someone, sending my coffee splashing across what had been an immaculate white blouse. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," I gasped, watching in horror as the brown stains spread across expensive-looking fabric. The woman looked up, and I found myself staring into the most startling green eyes I'd ever seen. They were emerald, actually emerald, not just the greenish hazel that people call green. Her hair was a deep, natural red that caught the sunlight streaming through the windows. "It's fine," she said, though her expression suggested otherwise. "I have a spare in my office." Please, let me pay for dry cleaning. I fumbled for napkins, making everything worse by awkwardly dabbing at her chest. I stopped abruptly, realizing how inappropriate that was. God, I'm making this worse. I'm Elizabeth White, new meditation instructor, and apparently professional coffee spiller. Her lips quirked into something approaching a smile. Angela Jackson. Stress management consultation. Ironic that I'm now the one needing stress management. Wait, Jackson? Something clicked. From Bennington College? Her perfect eyebrows rose. You went to Bennington. Class of 2013. You? 2018. Small world. Her smile warmed a few degrees. We're practically alumni sisters. There was something about the way she said sisters that made my stomach do a tiny flip. I pushed the feeling aside, blaming it on first day nerves and mortificate ion. Let me at least buy you a replacement coffee, I offered. It's the least I can do after assaulting your blouse. She checked her delicate gold watch. I have a meeting in 10. Rain check? Before I could respond, she pulled a business card from her folder and pressed it into my palm. Her fingers were cool against my skin, the contact brief but somehow electric. My cell's on the back. Text me when you've settled in. She gathered her things with efficient grace. Welcome to Mobile, Elizabeth White. I watched her walk away, her posture perfect despite the coffee stain. Something about her lingered, a scent perhaps, something expensive and subtle. I glanced down at her card, turning it over to see the handwritten cell number on the back. Her handwriting was precise, each number perfectly formed. The rest of orientation passed in a bureaucratic haze. I kept thinking about Angela Jackson with her flaming red hair and eyes like gemstones. There was something familiar about her, though I was certain we'd never met. Perhaps it was just the Bennington connection. That evening, alone in my still unfamiliar apartment, I found myself staring at her business card again. It felt presumptuous to text her so soon. We weren't friends. We were just two people who'd had an awkward collision and happened to share an alma mater. Still, I hadn't made any connections in Mobile yet, and the thought of spending another night alone with my unpacked boxes felt unbearable. Before I could overthink it, I typed out a message. Elizabeth White here. Settled in enough to make good on that rain check whenever you're free. Her response came faster than I expected. Faculty gathering at my place Friday 8 p.m. 1427 Azalea Apartments on Oak Street. Bring wine, not coffee. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Her directness was refreshing after the passive-aggressive communication style my family preferred. I'll be there, I replied, with wine safely contained in a bottle. Her response was just a wine glass emoji, but it made me smile anyway. On Friday evening, I stood outside her apartment door, clutching a bottle of Cabernet and feeling ridiculously nervous. I'd changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that brought out my eyes. I'd even put on makeup, something I rarely bothered with when teaching meditation classes. When she opened the door, I nearly forgot how to speak. Away from the fluorescent lighting of the university, Angela was stunning. Her red hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she wore a simple green dress that matched her eyes perfectly. You found it, she said, taking the wine from my hands. Her fingers brushed against mine, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Come in. Everyone's excited to meet the new meditation guru. As I stepped into her apartment, I had the strangest feeling I was crossing a threshold into something significant. Little did I know just how right that instinct would prove to be. Angela's apartment was everything mine wasn't, fully furnished, tastefully decorated, and somehow both elegant and comfortable. About a dozen faculty members were scattered around her living room, balancing wine glasses and small plates of appetizers. Angela introduced me to everyone, her hand lightly touching my back as she guided me through the room. I was in the middle of a conversation with the head of the psychology department when I heard it. Angela's voice from the kitchen, speaking to someone on the phone. Yes, Richard, I know how important this is to you. A pause. I'm handling it, trust me. Richard. It was a common enough name, but something in her tone made my stomach clench. I excused myself from the conversation and drifted toward the kitchen, pretending to look for a refill. She just started this week. I need time. Angela's voice dropped lower. Yes, brother dear, I know exactly what's at stake. Brother Richard Jackson. My wine glass nearly slipped from my fingers as the pieces clicked into place. Richard Campbell married into the Jackson family when his father's shipping business merged with Jackson Maritime 6 years ago. He took their name for business purposes. Richard Jackson, my would-be husband, was Angela's brother. This wasn't coincidence. She hadn't bumped into me by accident. I retreated to the hallway bathroom, locking the door behind me. My reflection looked pale and shocked. How stupid I'd been, thinking I could just run away and start over. Of course my family would send someone to find me. And who better than the charming sister of my intended? A soft knock startled me. Elizabeth? Angela's voice came through the door. Are you okay? I opened the door, pulling her inside and closing it again. You're Richard's sister. Her perfect composure faltered. I can explain. Were you ever going to tell me? Or just report back to your brother about where his runaway fiancé is hiding? My voice shook with anger and humiliation. Angela leaned against the sink. It's complicated. Seems pretty simple to me. You've been playing me from the moment we met. Not entirely. She looked down at her hands. Yes, Richard asked me to find you. Your parents were beside themselves when you disappeared, and our families have been frantically searching. When the university announced its new meditation instructor, Richard recognized your name immediately. So the coffee spill? The alumni connection? All calculated? She winced. The spill was genuine. The rest. She shrugged. I needed a way in. I turned to leave, but she caught my wrist. Her touch sent an unwelcome spark up my arm. Wait, please. Her green eyes pleaded with me. I might have approached you under false pretenses, but everything since has been real. I wasn't expecting to actually like you. Like me? I laughed bitterly. You don't even know me. I know you're brave enough to walk away from a life most women would kill for. I know you smile when you talk about meditation, like it's not just a job but a calling. I know you drink your coffee with too much sugar and apologize too much for things that aren't your fault. Her words tumbled out in a rush. And I know what it's like to have your life planned out for you by people who never bothered to ask what you want. That stopped me. What do you mean? Angela released my wrist, running a hand through her hair. You think you're the only one fighting against family expectations? At least they want you to marry into money and status. My family just wants me to give up everything I've worked for and come home to play the proper society daughter. We stood in silence, two women trapped by different versions of the same cage. Why did you really come to Mobile? I finally asked. Originally, to find you. But I've been wanting to leave Boston for years. This gave me the perfect excuse. She smiled ruefully. I told Richard I'd find you and convince you to come back. I never promised what I'd do after I found you. I studied her face, looking for deception. And now? Now I'm offering to help you disappear for real. Richard doesn't know I've confirmed it's you yet. I can throw him off your trail, give you time to decide what you really want. She stepped closer. I'm not my brother's keeper, Elizabeth. And contrary to what our families believe, we're not extensions of them either. It was crazy to trust her. Everything logical said I should walk out, pack my meager belongings, and run again. But something in her eyes, something vulnerable and defiant, resonated with me. Why would you help me? I asked. She took a breath. Because in the 5 days since I met you, I felt more alive than I have in years. Because I look at you and see someone who had the courage to do what I've only dreamed of doing. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And because when you spilled coffee all over my favorite blouse, all I could think about was how blue your eyes are. The party continued outside the bathroom door, voices and laughter muffled by the wooden barrier between us and them. In that small space, with Angela looking at me like I was worth risking everything for, I made another impulsive decision. Okay, I said. Let's be accomplices. Her smile was slow and genuine, lighting up her face from within. Partners in crime. When we emerged from the bathroom, no one seemed to notice we'd been gone. But something fundamental had shifted between us. We were no longer predator and prey, but conspirators against the lives others had planned for us. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the caution and the justified suspicion, I felt something dangerous begin to unfurl. Something that felt dangerously like hope. My first week of teaching passed in a blur of syllabi and introductory sessions. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Richard to appear or for Angela to reveal she'd been playing me all along. But instead, she texted me daily with random observations about campus or colleagues, never mentioning her brother. On Friday afternoon, she appeared at my classroom door just as my last meditation session ended. Impressive, she said as the students filed past her. They actually look relaxed. At my university, they'd be checking their phones before they even got to the door. I smiled, gathering my meditation cushions. Mobile students are different. Less intensity, more presence. Speaking of presence, she leaned against the doorframe. The wellness director mentioned they're looking for special workshops for midterms. I had an idea. I'm listening. What if we collaborated? Your meditation techniques combined with my stress management strategies. We could call it mindful stress relief or something less cliché that we'll think of later. Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. 2-hour workshop, twice a week during midterms month. I hesitated. Working closely with Angela seemed both appealing and dangerous. Could I really trust her? She sensed my hesitation. It would be good cover, too. Richard would never suspect I'm helping you if we're working together professionally. Always the strategist, I said, not unkindly. Occupational hazard. So? Partners? She extended her hand. I took it, feeling that same inexplicable spark. Partners. We began meeting after classes to develop our workshop. Angela's approach to stress management was more scientific than my holistic style, but our methods complemented each other surprisingly well. We secured a space in the campus wellness center, a bright room with large windows overlooking an oak grove. During our third planning session, I found myself mesmerized by Angela's hands as she explained a concept. They moved gracefully through the air, her long fingers tracing invisible patterns that somehow made her abstract ideas concrete. Elizabeth, are you listening? She caught me staring. Sorry. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I was watching your hands. You speak with them as much as with words. My mother spent a fortune on deportment classes trying to break me of it. She smiled ruefully, called it common and distracting. I think it's beautiful, I said before I could stop myself. The air between us changed, grew heavier with something unspoken. She held my gaze for a heartbeat too long. Show me that breathing technique again, she said finally, voice slightly rougher than before, the one for acute anxiety. I moved behind her, close enough to smell her perfume, something with sandalwood and vanilla. Place one hand on your diaphragm, I instructed. She did, and I hesitantly placed my hand over hers, feeling her warmth through the thin fabric of her blouse. Now breathe in for 4 counts, feeling the expansion. I counted softly near her ear, feeling her breath deepen. Hold for 7. Her body was tense against mine. And exhale for 8. We repeated the cycle several times, until I realized we were breathing in perfect synchronization. My front pressed lightly against her back. I stepped away abruptly. That's the basic technique, I said, my voice embarrassingly breathless. We finished our planning in record time that day, both of us carefully maintaining professional distance. The following week brought our first afternoon of heavy rain since I'd arrived in Mobile. Angela and I had planned to finalize our workshop materials at a cafe, but the downpour made even the short walk from campus buildings treacherous. My apartment's closer, I offered, watching lightning split the sky. We could work there. She agreed, and we made a mad dash through the deluge, arriving at my place soaked and laughing. You look like a drowned cat, I told her, tossing her a towel. You should see your hair, she retorted, gently squeezing water from her copper waves. I loaned her dry clothes, a oversized sweater and leggings that looked impossibly good on her, and we spread our materials across my living room floor, working as rain pounded against the windows. Hours passed as we refined our presentation, ordered takeout, and shared stories of our college days at Bennington. It was nearly midnight when we realized the storm had intensified. The weather alert says flash flooding on your route home, I said, checking my phone. Maybe you should stay. She looked out at the torrential rain. I don't want to impose. It's safer. I hesitated. I only have the 1 bedroom, but the bed is big enough to share. Unless you prefer the couch. The bed is fine, she said quietly. I lent her a nightshirt and took longer than necessary in the bathroom, giving us both time to adjust to this unexpected intimacy. When I emerged, she was already under the covers on the far side of the bed, her red hair stark against my white pillowcase. I slipped in beside her, careful to maintain a respectable distance. We lay in silence, listening to the storm rage outside. Elizabeth? Her voice was soft in the darkness. Yes? Thank you for trusting me. I know it isn't easy. I turned toward her, making out her profile in the dim light. Is this real, Angela? Whatever this is between us? She rolled to face me, close enough that I could feel her breath on my cheek. The only real thing in my life right now, she whispered. I'm not sure who moved first. Perhaps we both did. But suddenly the distance between us vanished, and her lips found mine in the darkness. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, then deepened with a hunger that took my breath away. Her hand cupped my face, then slid into my hair, drawing me closer. When we finally broke apart, I felt dizzy, my heart pounding like the rain against the windows. I've wanted to do that since you spilled coffee on me, she confessed, her voice husky. Even when you were supposed to be spying on me? Especially then. Her laugh was low and warm against my neck. You were never what I expected, Elizabeth White. Outside, thunder crashed, but neither of us startled. We were creating our own storm right there in my bed, as rain washed away the last of my doubts about the woman in my arms. Morning arrived with sunshine streaming through my curtains, and Angela's warm body nestled against mine. For a blissful moment, I forgot everything. My escape from Boston, her brother, the complications, and simply enjoyed the weight of her arm across my waist and her steady breathing against my neck. Then her phone rang. Angela jerked awake, fumbling for her cell on the nightstand. When she saw the screen, her face went pale. She shot me an apologetic look before answering. Hello, Richard. Her voice was carefully neutral. Under the covers, her free hand found mine and squeezed. No, I was just sleeping in. It's Saturday. I watched her face as she listened, the sunlight catching the copper highlights in her tousled hair. She was breathtaking, even half asleep, with faint pillow creases on her cheek. I'm still looking into it, she said, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. The meditation instructor matches Elizabeth's description, but I haven't confirmed it's her yet. She paused, listening. These things take finesse, Richard. If I spook her, she'll just run again. Another pause, longer this time. Her jaw tightened. I understand how important this merger is to you, and to Father. You don't need to remind me. I should have felt betrayed hearing her lie so smoothly, but instead, a strange thrill ran through me. Angela was choosing me over her family. Me, a woman she'd known for barely 2 weeks. I'll call when I have something concrete, she said. Yes. Love you too. Bye. She set the phone down and let out a long breath. Well, good morning. Is he always so demanding before breakfast? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Only when millions of dollars are at stake. She rolled onto her back, her shoulder still pressed against mine. He's under a lot of pressure. This merger with your family's company is his big chance to prove himself to our father. And I'm the linchpin. The walking, talking contract clause. She turned to face me again. Does it bother you, hearing me lie to him? I thought about it. It should. But I'm more concerned about you. Won't you be in trouble when he discovers the truth? She trailed her fingers through my hair, a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. By then, I'll have a plan. I always do. The master strategist, I murmured, leaning into her touch. Life taught me early that no one else was going to fight for what I wanted. Her green eyes held mine. What do you want, Elizabeth? The question was simple but profound. No one had asked me that in years, maybe ever. Not my parents, not my friends, certainly not Richard during our awkward arranged dates. Right now? I whispered, moving closer. You. Later, as morning drifted toward afternoon, we made coffee and sat on my small balcony. Angela borrowed another set of my clothes, though they hung loosely on her more slender frame. What will you tell your family? I asked, watching a pair of cardinals flit between trees. About us, I mean. Nothing yet. She cradled her mug in both hands. They still think I'm here temporarily, that I'll come running home once I find you. And will you go back? She was quiet for a long moment. I've been playing by their rules my whole life. The perfect daughter, the brilliant student, the right schools, the right career, but always on their terms. She set her mug down with surprising force. For once, I want something that's just mine. Something they didn't choose for me. Am I that something? I asked, half teasing, half serious. Her smile was slow and genuine. You're the most real thing in my life right now. We spent the day in comfortable domesticity, finishing our workshop preparations, ordering takeout, exchanging soft kisses and lingering touches that promised more to come. It felt surreal, this bubble of happiness we'd created. Too good to last. As evening fell, Angela's phone rang again. She grimaced at the screen before answering. Yes, Richard, I'm still in mobile. She rolled her eyes at me. No, I haven't forgotten why I'm here. I watched her face harden as she listened. You're what? Her eyes widened. That's completely unnecessary. I told you I'm handling it. She paced my small living room. Next weekend? But I have commitments here. The semester just started. My stomach dropped. Richard was coming to mobile. Fine. Angela's voice was tight. Text me your flight details. Yes, I'll pick you up. She hung up and stared at her phone like it might bite her. He's coming to find me himself, I said. It wasn't a question. Angela nodded, running a hand through her hair. Next weekend. Says he's tired of waiting. She crossed to the window, her back to me. I bought us as much time as I could. What do we do now? She turned, and the determination in her eyes took my breath away. We have a week to either get you out of mobile or convince him you aren't here. She crossed back to me, taking my hands. But whatever we decide, we do it together. I'm not giving this up, giving you up, now that I've found you. I should have been terrified. My carefully constructed escape plan was crumbling. But with Angela looking at me with such fierce protectiveness, I felt strangely calm. Together, I agreed, squeezing her hands. She kissed me then, soft but certain, before pressing her forehead to mine. 1 week to outsmart my impossibly stubborn brother. Good thing I have the master strategist on my side, I whispered against her lips. And don't you forget it. She smiled, but I could see the worry behind her eyes. The clock was ticking. 7 days until Richard Jackson arrived in Mobile, hunting for his runaway fiancé. 7 days to decide if I would stand my ground or flee again. 7 days to figure out if what Angela and I had found in each other was worth fighting for. The week passed in a blur of preparation, both for our workshop and for Richard's impending arrival. Angela stayed at my apartment most nights, returning to her place only to collect clothes and check her mail. We developed a rhythm together, as though we'd been sharing space for years instead of days. Our workshop launched on Wednesday afternoon to a packed room. The Wellness Center had promoted it extensively, and students under midterm pressure had signed up in droves. I handled the meditation components while Angela guided them through stress management techniques. Together we moved around the room making adjustments, offering encouragement, our professional personas never revealing the electric current that ran between us whenever our paths crossed. The energies in this room are completely transformed. The wellness director marveled afterward. You two have some kind of magic together. If only she knew. By Friday, word had spread. Our second session filled so quickly we had to add a third for the following week. After the last student left, Angela wrapped her arms around me from behind, placing a gentle kiss on my neck. We're good together, she murmured, in every way. We are, I agreed, turning in her embrace. Think we can convince your brother of that? She stiffened slightly. Let's not talk about him tonight. I have plans for us. Those plans turned out to be a picnic on the beach at sunset. Angela had packed a wicker basket with wine, cheese, and fruit. We sat on a blanket watching the sun sink into Mobile Bay, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. I've lived near water my whole life, Angela said, but I've never really looked at it until now. I leaned back on my elbows. That's what meditation is all about, being present enough to actually see what's in front of you. She propped herself on one elbow, facing me. The setting sun caught her hair, turning it to living flame. I see you, Elizabeth White. I've never seen anyone so clearly. The simplicity of her words made my heart swell. I reached out to touch her cheek. What do you see? A woman who had the courage to choose herself when everyone else was choosing for her. She turned to kiss my palm. Someone who approaches life with such openness that it makes me brave too. I've never thought of myself as brave, I admitted. Just desperate. Sometimes those are the same thing. She sat up, suddenly serious. There's something I need to tell you. My stomach tightened. What is it? I've never felt this way about anyone before. Her voice was low, almost vulnerable. Not just attraction or affection. This feels foundational. Like I'm finally understanding what all the poets have been going on about for centuries. Relief washed through me, followed by a wave of emotion so intense it nearly knocked me back. Angela Jackson, are you saying you're falling in love with me? She laughed softly. I'm saying I'm already fallen. Completely. and it terrifies me. I sat up and took her face in my hands. Good. Because I'm terrified too, and I wouldn't want to be terrified alone. We kissed as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon. The salt air cool on our skin, the sound of gentle waves providing a rhythm to match our hearts. Later that night, I led Angela through a private meditation session in my living room. We sat facing each other, knees touching, hands lightly clasped between us. Close your eyes, I instructed softly. Focus on your breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth. She followed my guidance, her face relaxing as she sank into the practice. Now, with each breath, imagine a golden light entering your body, filling you with warmth and peace. I watched her chest rise and fall in the candlelight, her copper eyelashes casting delicate shadows on her cheeks. She was ethereal, perfect. The light spreads through your chest, down your arms to your fingertips, I continued, my voice dropping lower. It flows through your core, down your legs to your toes. You are filled with light. Her fingers tightened slightly around mine. Now imagine that light extending beyond your body, connecting with mine. Our energies intertwining, becoming one unified field of light. Her lips parted slightly, her breathing deepening. I leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then her eyelids, then finally her lips. The meditation transformed into something else entirely, something ancient and profound. Our bodies spoke a language of desire and tenderness, of discovery and recognition. In the soft glow of candlelight, we mapped each other's bodies with reverent hands and hungry mouths, finding the places that made us gasp and arch and cry out. Afterward, as we lay tangled in each other, Angela traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Is this how all your meditation sessions end?" she asked, her voice playful. "Only the special ones," I replied, pressing a kiss to her collarbone. She grew serious again. "Richard arrives tomorrow afternoon." "I know." I pulled her closer. "Whatever happens, I'm not running again. I'm tired of letting fear dictate my choices." "You're sure?" "He can be intense. So can I, when something matters to me." I looked into her eyes. "You matter, Angela. What we found matters." She kissed me with such tenderness I felt tears spring to my eyes. Then we faced him together. And may the best sibling win. We fell asleep entwined, gathering strength from each other for the confrontation to come. Tomorrow, the bubble of happiness we'd created would be tested. Tomorrow, we would discover if what we had built was strong enough to withstand the storm that was Richard Jackson. But tonight was ours alone. I was halfway through my afternoon meditation class when I saw him. Richard Jackson stood in the doorway of my classroom, his tall frame blocking the light from the hallway. Even from across the room, I could see the displeasure tightening his jaw. His presence was exactly as I remembered. Imposing, controlled, expensive. The same qualities that had made my parents consider him the perfect match were now sending ice down my spine. "Continue your breathing practice," I told my students, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Focus inward." I walked toward the door, chin high, shoulders back. I wouldn't cower. Not anymore. "Richard," I said quietly when I reached him. "This is a surprise." His gray eyes, so unlike his sister's vibrant green, swept over me critically. "Elizabeth, you're looking well for someone who's caused so much worry." "My class has another 15 minutes, I said, gesturing to the room of students with closed eyes. "We can talk after." "I've waited long enough." His voice carried enough that several students opened their eyes. "Nearly a month of searching, only to find you've been hiding in plain sight." I felt heat rising in my cheeks, not from embarrassment but anger. This man had been prepared to marry me without ever considering what I wanted. And now he was disrupting my classroom, my sanctuary. "Either wait outside or I'll meet you at the campus coffee shop in 20 minutes, I said firmly. "Your choice." Something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps at my assertiveness. The Elizabeth he knew had been accommodating, soft-spoken. But that woman wasn't real. She'd been a carefully constructed facade, designed to please my parents and slide through life with minimal conflict. 20 minutes, he said curtly, checking his watch. Not a minute more. When he left, I returned to my class, guiding them through the final meditation sequence with autopilot professionalism. Inside, my mind was racing. Where was Angela? She'd gone to pick Richard up from the airport, but clearly they'd gotten separated. Had he intentionally ditched her to confront me alone? After dismissing my students, I checked my phone. 3 missed texts from Angela. He left the airport without me. Taking an Uber. Can't find him. Are you in class? Call me a sap. On my way to campus. Stall him if he finds you. Too late for that. I texted back quickly, he's here. Meeting at campus coffee shop in 5 minutes. I gathered my things and headed to the coffee shop, my heart pounding against my ribs. Part of me wanted to run, to grab my passport and disappear again. But Angela's face appeared in my mind, her determined eyes, her gentle hands. I couldn't leave her. Not now. Not after everything. Richard was already seated when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee on the table before him. Black, 1 sugar, he said, pushing one toward me as I sat down. Your usual. It unsettled me that he remembered such a detail when we'd only had a handful of awkward dates. Thank you, I said, but didn't drink. How did you find me? You weren't exactly hiding, Elizabeth. Teaching meditation under your real name? Using your actual credentials? He shook his head. If Angela hadn't been dragging her feet, I would have been here weeks ago. I bristled at the criticism of Angela, but kept my expression neutral. I wasn't hiding, Richard. I was leaving. There's a difference. Leaving what, exactly? A comfortable life? Financial security? A respectable marriage? His tone was incredulous. Do you know how many women would kill for the opportunity you threw away? Then marry one of them. The words came out sharper than I intended. I never asked for any of it. His jaw tightened. This isn't about what you asked for. It's about responsibility, about honoring commitments. Commitments I never made. My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I lowered it with effort. My parents arranged everything without my consent. I was presented with a done deal. That's how business works, Elizabeth. That's how our world works. Not my world. Not anymore. We stared at each other across the table, at an impasse. Richard was the first to look away, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Your parents are worried sick. Your mother cries every time your name is mentioned. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. He leaned forward. Is this little rebellion worth hurting them? A pang of guilt shot through me, but I steeled myself. I'm sorry they're hurt, but I'm not a commodity to be traded for business advantages. No one said you were, he countered. But there are expectations that come with privilege. Duties to family. Richard. Angela's voice cut through our standoff. She stood beside our table, slightly breathless, her cheeks flushed. I see you two found each other. Richard's expression hardened. No thanks to you. What happened to picking me up? You left without me, she said evenly, sliding into the chair beside me, a choice of position that didn't go unnoticed by her brother. I had to find my own way here. The tension between the siblings was palpable. I wondered how much Richard suspected about our relationship. I came to bring Elizabeth home, Richard said, his gaze shifting between us. Her parents are expecting her return. The wedding plans are on hold, but the merger documents are still awaiting signatures. And if I refuse? I asked quietly. His expression turned cold. Then I'll be forced to make things difficult. For both of you. He looked pointedly at Angela. Father wouldn't be pleased to learn his daughter has been sabotaging family business. And the university might find it interesting that their new meditation instructor fled Boston under questionable circumstances. The threat hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. You wouldn't, Angela said, her voice low. Try me. Richard's eyes were flint. I've worked too hard to let this fall apart now. I'd had enough. Standing abruptly, I looked down at the man my parents had chosen for me. This stranger who thought he could threaten and manipulate his way into marriage. I am not going back, I said, loud enough that everyone in the coffee shop turned to stare. Not now, not ever. I found something real here, Richard, something honest and true and worth fighting for. From the corner of my eye, I saw Angela's expression shift from shock to something like radiant pride. And what exactly is that? Richard asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I reached for Angela's hand, lacing our fingers together on top of the table. Love. The kind you can't arrange or negotiate or force. The kind that happens when you least expect it. Richard's face went completely blank, then flushed with understanding and fury. You and my sister? He hissed. This is why you've been stalling? This is what you've been hiding? Not hiding, Angela said, standing to join me. Just figuring out. And now we have. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Richard, but I choose Elizabeth. We walked out together, leaving Richard stunned and silent behind us. Outside in the autumn sunshine, Angela pulled me into her arms. You were magnificent, she whispered against my hair. Absolutely magnificent. But even as I melted into her embrace, I knew the battle was far from over. Richard Jackson wasn't a man who accepted defeat gracefully, and we had just dealt him a very public one. Angela moved out the next day. Not permanently, she insisted on that point as she packed an overnight bag in my bedroom, but temporarily, until we figured out our next steps. He's staying at my place, she explained, folding a blouse with military precision. I can't just not go home while he's in town. That would only escalate things. You don't have to explain, I said, though my chest felt hollow watching her pack. Do what you need to do. She paused, setting down the half-folded garment. This isn't me choosing him over you. This is strategy, Elizabeth. I need to know what he's planning. I know. I managed a smile that felt brittle on my face. The master strategist at work. She crossed the room and took my face in her hands. 3 days. Give me 3 days to handle Richard, and then we'll figure out the rest. I trust you, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. After she left, my apartment felt cavernous and empty. I wandered from room to room, finding traces of her everywhere. A forgotten earring on the bathroom counter, a half-empty mug of tea, the lingering scent of her perfume on my pillowcase. I threw myself into meditation, seeking the clarity that had always come so easily before. But my mind kept circling back to the same questions. What if Richard convinced her to leave? What if her family's pressure proved too strong? What if our brief, intense connection wasn't enough to withstand real-world complications? That night, I dreamed of drowning in Boston Harbor, weighted down by a wedding dress. I woke gasping for air, reaching instinctively for Angela, only to find her side of the bed cold and empty. The second day without her was worse than the first. I checked my phone obsessively, but her messages were brief and practical. Still talking with R, holding firm. He's meeting with university admin tomorrow. Not sure why. Miss you. Stay strong. I taught my classes mechanically, going through the motions of guiding students through breathing exercises, while my own breath felt shallow and constricted. After my last class, I found a note in my faculty mailbox requesting my presence at the dean's office the following morning. Richard was making good on his threats. I considered calling Angela but decided against it. She was already navigating difficult waters with her brother. I would handle this myself. That night, when a thunderstorm rolled in from the Gulf, I sat alone on my balcony watching lightning split the sky, remembering the night Angela and I had first kissed. The air felt electric with possibility then. Now it just felt heavy with loss. The dean was cordial but concerned when I arrived at his office the next morning. We've received some inquiries about your departure from Boston, he said, shuffling papers on his desk. Normally, I wouldn't give credence to such things, but when they come from a major donor's family... Richard Jackson, I said flatly. The dean looked uncomfortable. I'm not at liberty to discuss who... What exactly am I being accused of? I interrupted, a calm settling over me despite the circumstances. Nothing specific, just questions about your professional conduct, suggestions that you left your previous position under questionable circumstances. I sat up straighter. My previous employer will confirm I left in good standing. I have reference letters. My credentials are impeccable. Yes, well. The dean cleared his throat. There's also the matter of your relationship with Dr. Jackson. Our faculty handbook is quite clear about disclosing personal relationships that might constitute a conflict of interest. So that was Richard's angle. Not attacking my qualifications, but my relationship with Angela. Dr. Jackson and I are not in the same department. We have no supervisory relationship, and our personal connection began after we were both employed here. The calm in my voice surprised even me, but if the university is concerned, I'd be happy to sign whatever disclosure forms are necessary. The dean seemed taken aback by my directness. Yes, that would address one aspect of the concern. And the other aspects? He shuffled papers again. Perhaps if you were to speak directly with Mr. Jackson? He seemed quite adamant that there had been some misunderstanding between your families. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Dean Morrison, I came to Mobile to escape an arranged marriage that I never agreed to. Richard Jackson is the man I was supposed to marry. There is no misunderstanding. Only his wounded pride and his family's business interests. The dean's eyebrows shot up. I see. That puts things in a rather different light. I left his office with my job intact, at least for now. But the confrontation had drained me. I canceled my afternoon meditation session and went home, collapsing onto my couch in exhaustion. Hours later, a knock at my door roused me from a fitful sleep. I opened it to find Angela standing in the hallway, her face pale and drawn. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I stepped aside, noting the small suitcase at her feet. What happened? I chose. She walked past me into the living room. I told Richard I'm staying in Mobile. With you. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by concern. What did he say? That I'm throwing away my future, that father will cut me off, that I'm betraying the family for... She looked away. Well, you can imagine what he thinks of our relationship. I took her hands, cold despite the warm evening. Are you okay? No. Her honesty was brutal and beautiful. I'm terrified. I've never defied them like this before. Her green eyes met mine. But I'm also sure. More sure than I've ever been about anything. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her body shake with silent tears. For all her strength and strategy, Angela was breaking free from a lifetime of expectations. I knew that pain intimately. We'll figure it out, I whispered into her hair. Together. That night, as we lay intertwined in my bed, Angela finally asleep after hours of talking through possibilities and fears, I realized something profound. We had both spent our lives being what others wanted. Now, in choosing each other, we were finally choosing ourselves. Outside, the mobile night was alive with cricket song and distant thunder. Inside, in the quiet sanctuary of my bedroom, I held the woman I loved and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, we would face it as our true selves. No more running, no more pretending. For the first time in my life, I was fully awake. Autumn in Mobile painted the world in amber and gold. 3 months had passed since Richard's departure, and though the tremors of that earthquake still occasionally rippled through our lives, Angela and I had found our equilibrium. True to his word, Richard had convinced their father to cut Angela off financially. Her trust fund vanished overnight, access to family accounts terminated. But Angela had surprised everyone, including herself, with her resilience. I never realized how trapped I felt until it was gone, she told me one evening as we walked along the bay. All that privilege came with golden handcuffs. We threw ourselves into our work. Our meditation and stress management workshops had become so popular that the university gave us funding to expand the program across campus. Students sought us out between sessions, telling us how our techniques had helped them sleep better, focus more, panic less. My classroom became our sanctuary. There, guiding others through the journey of self-discovery, we found healing for our own wounds. Richard eventually returned to Boston, but not before delivering a parting shot. A letter arrived for Angela a week after he left, her father's handwriting on expensive stationery. She read it alone on our balcony, and though she never shared its contents, I recognized the particular silence that followed family rejection. That night, I held her until dawn broke, her tears soaking my shirt. By morning, she had straightened her spine and faced the day with characteristic determination. The Angela Jackson, who had arrived in Mobile seeking a runaway bride, was disappearing, replaced by a woman who charted her own course. As for my parents, they eventually sent a terse email acknowledging my decision not to return, though they reserved the right to disagree with my choices. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was communication. A thin bridge I hoped might someday bear more weight. Fall deepened toward winter, bringing cool breezes off the bay. Angela and I settled into a rhythm together, creating traditions in our shared apartment, Sunday morning coffee on the balcony, Wednesday night walks along the waterfront, impromptu dance parties in our kitchen. One bright November morning, Angela suggested we drive to the lake outside town for a weekend meditation retreat, just the two of us. We need space to breathe, she said, kissing my forehead. Away from campus, away from everything. The lake house she rented was small but perfect, nestled among pines with a deck overlooking the still water. We spent Saturday hiking trails cushioned with fallen leaves, talking about everything and nothing, planning and dreaming aloud. At sunset, Angela led me to the end of the wooden dock stretching into the lake. The water reflected the sky's watercolor palette, deep orange bleeding into purple and indigo. I want to try something, she said, taking my hands. A meditation. I smiled. You're going to teach me meditation now? Maybe you're not the only one with wisdom to share. She positioned us facing each other. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath. I followed her instructions, curious where she was leading. When I first came to Mobile, she began, her voice soft but steady. I was looking for something I thought was missing. A person, a sign of approval from my family, some external validation that I was on the right path. The gentle lap of water against the dock created a rhythm beneath her words. Instead, I found you, and through you, I found myself. Her voice caught slightly. Open your eyes, Elizabeth. I did and gasped. She was holding a small silver ring, twisted into the infinity symbol. This isn't about documents or family approval or anything external, she said, her green eyes reflecting the sunset. This is just us, choosing each other, every day. Will you marry me? Joy bubbled up from some inexhaustible spring inside me. Yes, I whispered. Absolutely yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting there all along. Later that evening, as rain began to fall, we sat on the covered porch wrapped in blankets, watching lightning illuminate the lake in brief, brilliant flashes. The parallel to our first night together wasn't lost on either of us. I never believed in any of this, Angela said, her head resting on my shoulder. Love at first sight, soul connections. I thought it was all romantic nonsense invented to sell greeting cards. And now? I asked, twisting my new ring around my finger. Now I think the mystics and poets were onto something after all. She looked up at me with such tenderness it took my breath away. Some people do find their way to each other across impossible odds. 6 months after Richard's unwelcome visit, Angela and I stood together beside Mobile Bay as sunset painted the sky in impossible colors. Our colleagues from the university formed a small semicircle around us, their faces warm with genuine happiness for our union. No family members attended. That bridge remained to be built, if ever. But as we exchanged simple vows, promises to honor each other's journey, to walk beside rather than ahead or behind, to choose each other every day anew, I realized we had created something even more precious than family approval. We had created freedom. As autumn leaves drifted down around us like nature's confetti, I looked into Angela's eyes and saw not just my lover, not just my future wife, but my fellow traveler. We had both broken free from lives others had designed for us, finding in each other the courage to breathe deeply, to live authentically, to be fully awake. And in that awakening was the truest meditation of all,